What is up, everybody? Welcome back to my object-oriented programming course using Java. Today what I want to talk about is exception handling. I'm going to start with exception handling basics, and then we'll go into more complex advanced details of exception handling. So let's take a look at some code, and then we'll take a look at a little bit of diagrams of what's happening with exception handling, what the point of it is. So here we have some code that uses exception handling. Basically, when we first of all, let me give you a little background on exception handling. First of all, when you use exception handling, you should not use it in every situation. You should only use it in certain situations where you may not have something execute as you expect it to execute, and you may want to handle that exception. So when you're writing Java code or any high-level language code that has exception handling in place, at least a library where you can use it, you should not be putting exception handling all over your code. So I want to get that out of the way. So now, when you do exception handling, there's a couple of things that happen when you go into what we call a try-catch block. So with exception handling, there is what we know as a try-catch mechanism. With a try-catch mechanism, what's going to happen is when anything you put within a try block, so this is called a try block, will execute up to the point of where the exception happens. And then once the exception happens, then you'll have the catch block, which will catch that particular specific exception, or you can use just a generic exception object. And we'll take a look at a more detailed example where we don't use a generic exception object. We will just use a detailed exception object by looking at the exception classes. Okay, so that's one important point that I would like to throw out there. When you have a try-catch block, you could only have one try, and then you could have multiple catches, meaning that I can catch multiple exceptions. But you can't have two try blocks and then one catch. That's not allowed. You could have multiple try-catch blocks in your code. That's allowed, meaning that I could have this have more than one blocks of code of try-catches. Not necessarily trying the same code, obviously. You would have some other try-catch block somewhere else down there. Okay, so that's another thing. Now, there are two things that can happen in a try-catch block. The first thing is when you come into the try, no exception happens, and we go on our merry way. When no exception happens in the try block, then the catch is completely ignored because nothing got raised. No exception got raised. So that's one case, right? Where everything works perfectly as you planned it to work, and you don't have to, the code doesn't have to go to the catch block. The other case is, let's say an exception is thrown in any of the lines inside your inside your try block. When that happens, when an exception is thrown, then the code is going to break at that point, okay? And then it's going to be, the exception is going to be handled by the catch block. So in this example, what I've done is I'm using the scanner object, okay, the scanner class, and the scanner class, the keyboard object, okay. I've created an instance of scanner using, and then now I have a keyboard variable which has a reference to the scanner class, right? That's a reference type, and I'm just asking for input. So the program is going to ask for a whole number Then we're going to use the next int to receive a number. And if this, let's say I was going to enter not a number, but something like text, then at that point an exception is going to happen because that's something that is not accepted in terms of a next int. Now, let's take a look at this simple example, okay? So if I run this, and again, it's going to loop, okay, until I enter a correct input. So if you look on the right, you'll see that it says enter a whole number. Now, what if I enter 42, right? That's not really a whole number, right? That's a string. And what's going to happen, because I'm using a try catch, when I press enter, this next int, line 13, is going to execute. But it knows that next int, this 42, is not an int, it's a string. Hence, an exception is going to happen. When the exception happens, it's going to immediately go down to my catch block, right? The exception object will generate. Okay, we will talk about that in the next part. And then I can now write out code to handle what happens next. In this case, I'm going to keep done equal to false. So I'm not going to touch it, right? Because I want to loop back and go all the way up here so that we can prompt the user for another number. Let me press enter. And you saw an exception happen. So when the exception happens, I'm not really printing any message that says an exception happened, but I am printing a message that says not a correctly written number, whole number, right? Try again. Now the loop goes back up, okay, and it's going to prompt me for another number again. Notice how my program does not halt. So one of the main reasons that you want to do exception handling in your code is you want to have your program not stop every time some error happens, a runtime error happens, which you can handle. And that's one main reason why when you write software, you want to make sure that it's up to a point that it's fail safe, right? That even if there's something erroneous that's happening, it's not going to completely bomb out and stop your program completely. So in this case, my program didn't stop and it's just asking me for another number. So what I can do is I can keep trying, right? So 55. Again, exception happens. Okay, the exception got raised because of that. And then it's going to go in here again, right? We're going to just print out an error message. We're going to come back up and then it's going to ask us for a number again. And once it asks us for a number again, I'll just enter a correct number, so 47. Okay, so then after I enter 47, no exception happens, so done becomes true. The catch block gets completely ignored because it went through the whole try block. We went back up, and then this will break out because it is false. Okay, and then the program is going to continue to line 23 and just print out the number. And that's pretty much the basics of exception handling. You basically can have, you'll pick out a block of code that you think could potentially raise some type of exception, and you don't want that exception to cause any type of halting errors in your program, meaning that you don't want the program itself to halt. You want to catch that exception and handle it yourself. And that's the preliminary points of exception handling basics. Okay, now there is a lot more to this, obviously, and that's why I'm going to dedicate a couple of videos on exception handling in Java. Okay, but you can probably take this knowledge and take it and apply it to other languages. I know you can apply it. You could apply it to C# as well. It's just a little bit of a different syntax, but the logic still remains the same. Okay, so on the next video, I'm going to talk about throwing exceptions. Okay, so throwing exception. So there's a try catch and then try throw catch. Okay, try throw catch, which is a trio of exception handling. See you on the next video.